That is how she learns to behave. Those words made my blood run cold. It has been 3 years since that scene, and I can still hear the echo of that applause. The applause of a mother watching her son beat my daughter. My name is Elena Vance. I am 57 years old. I am a family law attorney specializing in domestic violence cases. I have spent 32 years defending women who could not defend themselves. I have faced corrupt judges, violent husbands, and entire families protecting the abuser. But nothing, absolutely nothing in my career prepared me to see my own daughter being beaten right in front of me. This is the story I never thought I would have to tell. The story of how a Sunday dinner destroyed a family and how a silence of 30 seconds changed the destiny of 4 people forever. Because you see, they did not know who they were messing with. Let me take you back to that night. It was Sunday, March 20th. I remember the exact date because it was the birthday of my late husband, Robert. He had died 2 years prior from a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone in that big house in the suburbs that used to be filled with laughter. Ariana, my only daughter, had insisted that I go to dinner at her house. "Mom, you cannot be alone on Dad's birthday. Come over, I will make his favorite dish." Pot roast. My daughter, my Ariana, 32 years old, a chemical engineer, a brilliant mind who had inherited her father's intelligence and my tenacity. Or so I thought. I arrived at 7 in the evening at her house in the hills, a beautiful residence they had bought just a year ago with the money Robert had left us. I had given her her full share of the inheritance against my accountant's advice. "Mrs. Vance, could you put it in a trust, just in case?" Just in case what I had asked him annoyed. Just in case my daughter married a man who turned out to be a monster, I should have listened to him. When I arrived, the table was already set. Fine china crystal glasses, scented candles. Ariana had been cooking for hours. I could smell it. The roast, the mashed potatoes, the homemade biscuits. The smell transported me immediately to our kitchen back home, to Robert tasting the gravy straight from the pot to Ariana, as a child stealing bites of carrots. But something was different. Ariana was different. Her hair was shorter than usual, almost to her shoulders. She was wearing a long-sleeved blouse despite the heat of March, and when she hugged me, I felt her tense up as if every muscle in her body was on high alert. "Honey, are you okay?" "Sure. Mom just tired from work." I should have insisted. I should have asked more. But her husband was there. Mark. Smiling with that smile I had always found too perfect, too rehearsed. "Mother-in-law, so good to see you. Come in, come in." And behind him, like a dark shadow, was his mother, Helen, 64 years old. A widow too, but a different kind of widow. Her husband had died 10 years ago in circumstances that were never entirely clear. An accident on the stairs of her house. A fatal fall. Investigation closed quickly. I, with my 3 decades of experience in family cases, had sensed something strange from the day I met her at the wedding. But Ariana was so in love, so happy, that I kept my suspicions to myself. Another mistake that haunts me every night. "Elena, dear, what a joy to have you here," said Helen, with that sugary voice she always used. Ariana prepared a delicious dinner. "My son is lucky to have such a dedicated wife." A dedicated wife. Those words as if Ariana were a servant who had to earn her place in that house, in the house she had paid for with her own inheritance. We sat at the table. Mark at the head, of course, Helen to his right, me opposite her, and Ariana. Ariana between her husband and her mother-in-law, like she was trapped between 2 walls. The dinner started quietly, too quietly. Helen talked and talked about her new decoration project, about her friends at the country club, about how wonderful it was to have her son so close now that he lived in the same neighborhood. I ate in silence, observing. I watched how Ariana served the food with trembling hands. I watched how Mark did not even say thank you. I watched how Helen subtly criticized every dish. "The gravy is a bit salty, do not you think, son? The biscuits are a little cold." In my day, wives got up earlier to have everything perfect. And I watched how my daughter, my brilliant, strong, independent daughter, shrank with every word. Then it happened. Ariana was pouring more water into Mark's glass when her hand shook just a little. Barely a drop fell on the white tablecloth. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark slowly placed his fork on the plate. The sound of metal against porcelain echoed like a gunshot at that table. Mark said, with a voice dangerously calm, "Do you see what you did?" My daughter opened her mouth to apologize, but he gave her no time. What happened next occurred in slow motion, but it was so fast I could barely process it. Mark got up from his chair and slapped my daughter. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound of his hand against Ariana's face filled the dining room. My daughter fell from her chair, hitting the marble floor. And then I heard the applause. Helen was clapping. "That is how she learns to behave," she said with a satisfied smile. "A clumsy wife needs correction. I also had to educate my husband this way. It is for her own good." My blood froze. For 30 seconds I could not move. I could not breathe. 32 years defending women victims of violence, and I could not react when it happened right in front of my eyes. But those 30 seconds were not paralysis. They were calculation. Because in my head, I started processing everything I was seeing with the coldness of a lawyer who had seen this hundreds of times. The power of control, the forced submission, the normalized violence, the complicit family, and something else. I saw the glass of water with the slight condensation ring on the table, the drop that had fallen, the way Mark had reacted disproportionately. This was not the first time. I stood up from my chair slowly without saying a word. Mark looked at me with that arrogant smile waiting for me to scream, to make a scene, to get hysterical like him. Probably what he expected emotional women to do. But I did not scream. I took my phone out of my purse. My hands did not shake. Not once. And I dialed a number I had on speed dial for 20 years. "Commander Miller," I said with a voice so cold I surprised even myself. "This is Elena Vance. I need an immediate response unit at 345 Palm Avenue, apartment 802. Domestic violence in progress with witnesses." I'm going to activate the recording on my phone now. And I did. I activated the recorder. I put the phone on speakerphone on the table and looked directly into Mark's eyes. "Repeat what you just did," I said. "Repeat what your mother just said. Please." "I have all night." Mark's face changed color, from arrogant red to ghostly white in 3 seconds. You cannot." "I am a lawyer, specializing in gender violence for 32 years, I said with the same cold voice. "I have prosecuted 218 men like you. I have direct contact with the special prosecutor's office, and you just beat my daughter in front of me, in front of your mother, who applauded and justified your violence, making her a legal accomplice." I walked over to Ariana, who was on the floor, her face red and silent tears falling down her cheeks. I helped her up carefully, checking for any serious injuries. "Mom," she whispered. "Silence, my love. I am doing the talking now." Mark took a step toward me, but I held up a hand. "If you touch me, that is 3 more felonies: threat, attempted aggression against a key witness, and obstruction of justice. Do you want to keep adding years?" Helen, for the first time all night, had stopped smiling. "This is a family matter," she said with a trembling voice. "You have no right to. I have every right in the world. I am a direct witness to a crime punishable by 3 to 6 years in prison. And you, madam, as an active accomplice who justified and celebrated the violence, can face up to 4 additional years." At that moment we heard the sirens. Half an hour. I had told them they would arrive in half an hour, but I had known Commander Miller for 2 decades. He knew that when I called it was serious. They had arrived in 17 minutes. 3 patrol cars parked in front of the building. 6 officers came up to the apartment. Commander Miller entered first with that imposing presence I had learned to respect in hundreds of cases. Attorney Vance, he greeted me formally. Then he saw Ariana, with her face marked, still trembling. His expression hardened. "We have caught them in the act," I told him. 3 blows, direct witness, partial recording on my phone, and accomplice present. The commander nodded and looked at Mark. "Sir, you have the right to remain silent." What followed was pure protocol. Mark was arrested. Helen, too, as an accomplice. Both were handcuffed and taken to the patrol car. Before leaving, Mark looked at me with a hatred I will never forget. "This is not going to stay like this," he said. "My family has contacts. We are going to." "Your contacts are worth nothing when there is solid evidence and witnesses," I interrupted him. And if you try to intimidate me or get near my daughter, I will personally ensure that every day of your sentence is spent in the prison furthest from this city." They took him away, and for the first time all night, I hugged my daughter. She cried in my arms for what seemed like an eternity. She cried out years of silence, of fear, of feeling trapped in a nightmare she did not know how to end. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked her when she could finally speak. "I was ashamed, Mom. You have always been so strong, always defending other women. How was I going to tell you that I was being a victim myself? How was I going to accept that I married a man who turned out to be exactly the kind of monster you fight?" I hugged her tighter. "It ends today." And so it was. But this story does not end with the arrest. This story is just beginning. Because what Mark and Helen did not know was that the universe has a very particular way of serving justice, and I was going to make sure that every single one of their actions had its consequence. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. Before I tell you what happened after that night, I need you to understand something important. I need you to know who Ariana was before Mark. Because when you see a woman destroyed by violence, it is easy to forget that she was once a girl who laughed without fear, that she was a teenager full of dreams, that she was a woman who walked through life with her head held high. Ariana was born on July 23rd, the middle of summer. Robert and I had been married barely 2 years when she arrived, filling our house with a cry that at that moment seemed like the most beautiful sound in the world. My husband was an architect, a nobleman, of the kind that are rare these days. He never raised his voice, he never raised his hand. When we had disagreements, we sat in the living room with coffee and talked until we found common ground. That is how we grew, and that is how Ariana grew. Our daughter was curious from a young age. I remember when she was just 4 years old, she took apart the house phone because she wanted to see how the voices spoke from inside. Robert laughed for half an hour when he found the pieces scattered all over the living room. "This girl is going to be a scientist," he told me while we picked up screws from the floor. And he was right. Ariana was always brilliant. Not just smart, but with that special spark of wanting to understand how everything worked. Plants, machines, chemical reactions, people. When she was 12, she won her first science fair with a project on water purification. I remember her face when they gave her first place, a mixture of pride and that genuine humility she never lost. "Mommy, do you think Dad is proud? Your father has always been proud of you, my love, from the day you were born." Robert was there in the audience with eyes shining with held-back tears. That night, the three of us went to dinner at Ariana's favorite restaurant, a small place downtown that made the best Swiss enchiladas in the whole district. To our scientist, toasted Robert, raising his glass of iced tea. To our family, I said. To being together added Ariana, with that smile that lit up any room. Together. That word was like an anchor for us. We did not have much money in those years. Robert's career was just taking off, and I was still building my reputation as a lawyer. But we had something more valuable. We had each other. Sundays were sacred in our house. Robert cooked roast. It was his specialty, a recipe he had inherited from his grandmother. He spent hours preparing the meat-mixing spices, adjusting the flavor of the gravy. Ariana and I were his official assistants. She measured the ingredients with scientific precision. I told the family stories my husband loved to hear. "Have I told you about the Mrs. Dominguez case?" I asked while chopping onions. "Mom, you have told us that case like 20 times, laughed Ariana. "But this time I have new details." And so we spent the afternoons. Between laughter, simmering roast, and the smell of the biscuits Robert insisted on making by hand because store-bought ones do not taste the same. Those Sundays, how I miss those Sundays. Ariana grew up fast, too fast, like all children grow when you are not paying attention. Suddenly she was 15, then 18, then she was entering university. She studied chemical engineering at State University. She was top of her class, always. Not because she was an obsessive perfectionist, but because she genuinely loved what she did. She came home excited, talking about exothermic reactions, about material balances, about industrial processes I could barely understand. "Mommy, did you know we can turn organic waste into clean energy? It is fascinating." Robert and I listened to her mesmerized, proud to have a daughter so passionate about changing the world. When she graduated with honors at 24, Robert cried throughout the ceremony. He did not bother to hide the tears. He was too happy, too proud. "That is my daughter," he told anyone sitting nearby. "That is my Ariana." After graduation, we took a photo of the three of us together. That photograph is now framed in my living room, Ariana in the middle holding her degree, with Robert and me on each side hugging her, all smiling. We did not know that would be one of the last complete photos we would have as a family. Ariana got a job immediately at a major pharmaceutical company. She was a researcher, developing new processes for more accessible generic drugs. Her dream had always been to do science that helped people. "I do not want to work just for money, Mom. I want my work to mean something," and it meant something. In 2 years, she was already a project leader. She published 3 articles in international scientific journals. She traveled to conferences in Europe and the United States. She was independent, successful, happy. She lived alone in a small but cozy apartment in the city. On weekends, she went running in the park. She went out with her friends from university. She visited exhibitions in museums. And every Sunday, without fail, she came home for Dad's roast. That was our untouchable tradition. Until she met Mark. It was at an industrial engineering conference 5 years ago. He worked at a consulting firm presenting a project on process optimization. Ariana was there representing her pharmaceutical company. "Mommy." I met someone, she told me that afternoon on the phone, with an emotion in her voice I had not heard before. My heart skipped a beat, not of joy, but of that feeling every mother has when her daughter is growing up, when she is about to share her life with someone else. "Tell me." His name is Mark. He is an industrial engineer. He is smart, funny, and has incredible eyes. We talked for 3 hours after the conference, 3 hours, Mom. I did not even notice the time. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to feel that pure joy a mother should feel when her daughter falls in love for the first time. But something inside me stirred, a silent alarm that at that moment I did not know how to interpret. "When are we going to meet him? Soon. Very soon. I want Dad and you to meet him." 3 weeks later, Mark came to dinner at the house. He arrived on time, with a bottle of expensive wine and flowers for me, well-dressed, well-groomed, with that perfect smile I mentioned before. Too perfect. "Mrs. Vance, it is an honor to meet you. Ariana has told me so much about you and your work. I deeply admire what you do for women victims of violence. The right words, the right tone, the right posture." Robert shook his hand. They talked about architecture and engineering, about projects and professional perspectives. My husband seemed comfortable with him, but I watched him. I watched how he subtly interrupted Ariana when she spoke. I watched how his smile did not quite reach his eyes. I watched how, when Ariana mentioned a recent professional achievement, he quickly changed the subject to his own successes. Small details, insignificant to any normal person. But I had spent 30 years seeing patterns, and I recognized the warning signs. That night, when Mark and Ariana left, Robert found me in the kitchen washing dishes in silence. "What is wrong, love?" he asked me, knowing my silence better than anyone. "I do not know. Something does not add up. Give him time. It is the first time you see Ariana in love. It is natural to worry." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was projecting my work cases onto my personal life. Maybe I was being overprotective, but my instinct was screaming. The months followed. Ariana and Mark became inseparable. She started talking less about her work and more about him. She stopped going to the gym because Mark preferred they spend that time together. She stopped going out with her friends on Fridays because he wanted it to be their special night. "Mommy, I am happy, really happy. I wanted to believe her. God knows I wanted to believe her." Then we met Helen. It was 6 months later at a family lunch Mark organized. His mother had just moved to the city, according to what she told us, to be closer to her son. "He is all I have since my husband died," she explained with that sweet voice I later learned to detest. Helen was different from anyone I had met, elegant in appearance, but with an energy that occupied the entire space. She talked nonstop, always directing the conversation towards Mark, towards how wonderful he was, towards how much she had suffered to raise him alone after her husband's death. "It was a terrible accident," she said with dramatically moist eyes. "He fell down the stairs. I never got over that loss." But her body language did not match her words. There was no real pain in her expression, only performance, and the way she looked at Ariana, like evaluating, like measuring, like deciding if my daughter was good enough for her son. After that lunch, Robert and I talked until dawn. "That woman gives me a bad vibe," I said. "Me too. But Elena Ariana is an adult. We cannot." I know, but something is wrong. I can feel it." Robert hugged me that night as he had done thousands of times in our marriage. "If something is wrong, Ariana will see it. We raised her to be smart, to be strong. Let's trust her." And I trusted. That was my mistake. A year later, Mark proposed to Ariana, an elaborate proposal at a lake house with rose petals and violinists. She said yes, crying with happiness. When she told us, I hugged my daughter and told her I was happy for her, and part of me was. The other part, the experienced lawyer, was screaming in silence. The wedding was beautiful. 200 guests in a garden in wine country. Ariana was radiant in her white dress. Like all brides, Robert walked her down the aisle. I remember he looked at me before giving her away, and in his eyes I saw the same worry I felt. But it was too late. We had already said yes. We had already given our blessing. The first months of marriage seemed normal. Ariana kept coming home on Sundays, although now with Mark. We kept making roast. Although conversations no longer flowed with the same naturalness, Mark always had an opinion on everything. He always corrected some detail of Ariana's stories. He always diverted attention to himself. And Ariana started talking less. Then, Robert died. It was sudden. A massive heart attack while he slept. He went in peace, without pain, but he went too soon. 62 years old. We still had so many years ahead, so many more Sundays of roast, so many stories to create, so many grandchildren to meet. But he was gone. And with him went the balance of our family. The funeral was a whirlwind of pain. Ariana cried in my arms like she hadn't cried since she was a child. Mark was there, correct and appropriate, but distant, as if fulfilling a social duty rather than comforting his wife. Helen, for her part, spent the entire funeral comparing Robert's death to her own husband's death. I know exactly how you feel, Elena. I also lost the love of my life. Although I must say, my loss was more traumatic because it was violent. Even in my pain, I recognized the manipulation. But I was too broken to confront it. The weeks after the funeral were the darkest of my life. The house felt empty, full of ghosts of a life that no longer existed. Robert's coffee mug still on the kitchen counter, his robe hanging in the bathroom, his architecture books in the study. Ariana came every day. She stayed with me. She made me food I could not eat. She forced me to shower, to get out of bed. "Mom, you have to keep going. Dad would want you to keep going." And she was right, but going on without Robert was like breathing without air. It was during those months that Mark began to change. Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe he showed who he had always been. He started suggesting that Ariana shouldn't come to visit me so much. "Your mother is fine. She has to learn to be independent." He started criticizing her work, her clothes, her schedule. "Why do you get home so late from the office? What are you really doing?" And Ariana, devastated by the loss of her father, vulnerable and seeking stability, began to give in. She stopped coming so often. She stopped telling me so much. She stopped being the woman she had been. I noticed it in phone calls, in how her voice had lost that brightness, in how she always spoke in whispers, as if someone were listening. "Honey, are you okay?" "Yes, Mom. I'm just tired from work." The same answer, over and over again. And I, sunk in my own grief. I did not insist enough. Another mistake I carry. 6 months after Robert's death, the inheritance arrived. Robert had been a successful architect. He had invested well. He had saved thinking about our future. He left Ariana and me a considerable amount. I gave Ariana her full half, without restrictions, almost $500,000. Mom, this is too much. You should keep more. No, my love. Your father wanted you to have security. He wanted you to be able to follow your dreams without financial worries. With that money, Ariana and Mark bought the house in the hills, a beautiful residence, which should have been a home full of love. But it became a prison. Visits became more spaced out. Ariana always had an excuse: work, renovations, commitments with Mark's family. When I saw her, I noticed subtle changes. Her hair shorter, her clothes more conservative, her makeup heavier. Mom, I like this new style, but in her eyes there was something I had never seen before: fear. And I, blinded by my own pain, by my own grief, I did not recognize it until that night, that damn night of March 20th, the night that changed everything. The night I finally opened my eyes and saw what had been happening under my nose for 2 years. My daughter was not okay. My daughter had not been okay for a long time, and I had been too lost in my own sadness to realize. But that night, when I saw those 3 blows, when I heard that applause, when I felt my blood freeze, that night I recovered my purpose. That night I remembered who I was: Elena Vance, lawyer, fighter, mother, and nobody, absolutely nobody, was going to touch my daughter without consequences. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. The first fracture was not a blow. It was something much more subtle, much more dangerous. It was a word. Let me explain. After that night of March 20th, when Mark and Helen were arrested, Ariana stayed with me at my house. I did not want her to go back to that residence in the hills. Not that night. I needed to have her close, make sure she was safe. I took her to her old room, the one we had kept exactly as she left it when she moved out. Her single bed with the sky blue quilt she herself had chosen at 15. Her diplomas and awards still hanging on the wall. The photograph of her with Robert at her graduation on the desk. Mom, I haven't slept here in so long, she said with a voice so small it broke my heart. I helped her change. I gave her one of my clean pajamas. I made her chamomile tea with honey like I did when she was a child and could not sleep. We sat on her bed, like so many nights of her childhood. Tell me everything I said softly. From the beginning. I need to know when it started. Ariana remained silent for a long time. She stared at her cup of tea, watching the steam rise in delicate spirals. Finally, she spoke. Do you remember our honeymoon in Greece? Of course I remembered. It had been 3 years ago. Ariana came back with hundreds of photographs. The impossible blue sea of Santorini, the ruins of Athens, the sunsets in Mykonos. In all the photos, she was smiling. She looked radiant. She looked happy. On the last night in Santorini, Ariana continued we were having dinner at that restaurant overlooking the sea. Do you remember I sent you that photo? I nodded. I remembered it perfectly. Ariana in a white dress, the sun setting behind her, her smile wide and genuine. We had drunk wine. We were celebrating. A waiter approached our table, a young guy, Greek, very kind. He asked me in English if everything was okay with the food. I told him yes, that everything was delicious. We talked for maybe 30 seconds. Ariana took a sip of her tea. Her hands trembled slightly. When the waiter left, Mark stayed quiet. I thought he was enjoying the view, the moment. But when I looked at him, he had that expression I later learned to fear. And what expression? Cold, distant, as if suddenly I was a stranger. What happened? We finished dinner in silence. We went back to the hotel. I thought he would get over it, that maybe it had been the wine or the tiredness of the trip. But when we got to the room, he closed the door and looked me directly in the eyes. Ariana paused, took a deep breath. I continued waiting, giving her the space she needed. He called me. A flirt. One single word. But the way Ariana pronounced it, with that weight, with that contained pain, made me understand that it had not been just a word. It had been a sentence. I asked him what he meant. He told me he had seen how I smiled at the waiter, how I prolonged the conversation unnecessarily, how clearly I was seeking his attention. Ariana. I told him he was crazy, that I had just been polite. That is how I am with everyone. And then he laughed. He laughed, Mom. But it was not a normal laugh. It was a condescending laugh, as if I were a silly girl who did not understand the world. What did he tell you? He told me that maybe I did not realize what I was doing, that maybe I was naturally such a flirt that I did not even notice, that his mother had warned him that women too independent like me sometimes did not know how to behave appropriately in a marriage. I felt the rage rise up my throat, but I held it back. I needed to hear everything. I spent the rest of the night apologizing, Mom, apologizing for something I had not done, because he made me feel that maybe I had done something wrong without realizing, that maybe I had been inappropriate, that maybe I needed to be more aware of how my actions could be misinterpreted. That was the first fracture. I did not realize at that moment. I thought it was a misunderstanding. I thought he was being sensitive because it was our honeymoon and he wanted everything to be perfect. Ariana wiped a tear that had started to fall. But the next day, at the airport on the way back, he bought flowers, red roses. He hugged me and told me he was sorry, that he had overreacted, that it was because he loved me so much that the idea of losing me made him irrational, the classic cycle, explosion, honeymoon, tense calm, explosion. I had seen it hundreds of times in my cases, and now I was seeing it in my own daughter. When was the next time 2 months later? We went to a work meeting for my company. It was a celebration. We had closed an important contract. My boss, Dr. Roberts, congratulated me publicly. He hugged me, a professional hug, appropriate, of those you give in work contexts. Mark claimed you did it. That night he yelled at me for the first time. He said I had humiliated him, that everyone at that party had seen how I allowed my boss to touch me, that clearly I had no respect for our marriage. I explained that he was my boss, that it had been a professional hug, that there were 50 other people there. But he did not listen. He kept yelling. He called me naive. He called me stupid. He told me that obviously my boss wanted something else and that I was too stupid to realize. Ariana leaned back against the headboard of her bed. Exhausted from recounting memories she had clearly been keeping for a long time. I started being afraid to go out, afraid to talk to coworkers, afraid to smile too much, afraid to wear clothes he considered provocative. I started constantly measuring myself. Is this blouse appropriate? Is this conversation innocent? Can this smile be misinterpreted, daughter? That is psychological violence. It is control. I know, Mom. I know now. But at that moment, I just wanted things to go back to how they were at the beginning, when he was charming, when he made me feel special. I kept thinking that if I behaved correctly, if I was the perfect wife, he would go back to being that man I fell in love with. I recognized my own failure in that moment. All the times Ariana had canceled plans with me, all the times she had stopped coming on Sundays, all the times her voice sounded dull on the phone. I had thought it was the grief for Robert, that it was the natural adjustment of marriage, that it was busy adult life. But it had been this: systematic isolation, gradual control, invisible violence. When did the blows start? I asked, although part of me did not want to know the answer. Ariana closed her eyes. 8 months ago, a few days after we bought the house bought with her father's money, the money Robert had left for her to have security, freedom, options. The irony was cruel. I was excited about the house. I wanted to decorate it, make it ours. I hired an interior designer, a talented young guy who came recommended by a friend. His name was Sebastian. I already knew where the story was going. Sebastian came often, taking measurements, showing me color options, furniture. He was professional, always. But Mark didn't like it. He said he spent too much time in our house, that clearly he had intentions. I told him he was gay, Mom. Sebastian was openly gay. He was engaged to his partner. I showed him his Instagram profile where he was clearly seen with his boyfriend. But Mark didn't care. He said he could be bisexual, that he could be lying, that I was too trusting. He forbade me to continue working with Sebastian. I had to fire him, invent an excuse. Sebastian felt terrible. He thought he had done something inappropriate. I had to lie to him. And it was there when we had the worst argument up to that moment. I told him he was being irrational, that he had no right to control who I worked with, that was my house too, bought with my money. Ariana opened her eyes. They were red, swollen. He pushed me against the wall. He didn't hit me, not with a closed fist, but he pushed me so hard I hit my head against the plaster. I saw stars for a few seconds. I felt nauseous. He apologized immediately. He cried. He said he didn't know what had happened to him, that I had provoked him by mentioning my money when we were supposed to be a team, that he was under a lot of stress at work, that his mother was sick and he was worried. Ariana bought my forgiveness, Mom. Literally. The next day he arrived with a diamond necklace. He took me to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He told me he was going to change, that he was going to go to therapy, that he loved me more than anything in the world. Did he go to therapy? He went to 2 sessions. Then he said the therapist didn't understand him, that the therapist was on the side of women and that it wasn't fair. Of course not. Abusers never accept responsibility. They always find excuses. They always blame others. They always victimize themselves. The following months were a roller coaster. Some weeks he was the perfect man. He brought me flowers. He wrote me sweet messages. He treated me like a queen. Other weeks he was. He was a stranger, cold, critical, controlling. And Helen, I said. Where was Helen in all this? Ariana's face hardened. Helen made everything worse, Mom. She moved closer to us 6 months ago. She bought an apartment 3 blocks from our house. 3 blocks, 3 blocks. And she started coming every day. Every day, Mom. Sometimes without warning. She arrived with her keys, because Mark had given her a set, and entered as if it were her house. One day I arrived from work and found her reorganizing my kitchen, moving my things, throwing away spices that according to her were no longer good, changing plates around, I told her, with all possible politeness, that I appreciated her help, but that I preferred to organize my own kitchen. Do you know what she answered me? I shook my head. She told me, a good wife accepts her mother-in-law's advice. I raised Mark alone, working double shifts, sacrificing everything for him. The least you can do is let me help you be the wife he deserves. The wife he deserves, I repeated with bitterness. Helen had an opinion on everything. On my clothes. That skirt is too short. What will people think on my work? You should consider reducing hours. Men need their wives to be available. On my kitchen. My son's roast is too salty. Clearly you do not know the correct recipe. And Mark always defended her. Always. It didn't matter how unreasonable she was. He took her side. He told me his mother had suffered a lot, that she had raised a son alone, that I should be more understanding. I started feeling like a stranger in my own house, as if I were living in their house, not mine, as if I were a guest who had to earn the right to be there. Ariana got out of bed, walked to the window of her old room. She looked outside, towards the garden where Robert used to grow herbs for cooking. Do you know what is the worst part, Mom? What? That Helen talked to me about her marriage as if it were a role model. She told me how she educated her husband, how she put him in his place when he behaved badly, how she taught him that she was the one who ruled the house. I always thought those stories were strange. She talked about hitting him with objects when he got drunk, about hiding his money when he didn't behave well, about punishing him by locking him out of the house at night. A shiver ran down my back. And when she told me these stories, she laughed. She laughed, Mom, as if they were funny marriage anecdotes, not abuse. Do you think what if she killed her husband? I do not know. But every time she mentions it, there is something in her eyes, something cold, something that scares me. Ariana returned to bed, snuggled next to me. As when she was a child and had nightmares, the first real blow, the first with a closed fist, was 4 months ago. I waited. It was something so stupid, so ridiculously stupid, that I am ashamed to tell it. Tell me anyway. I was cooking, making dinner. Helen had come and had criticized everything, the cleaning, the food from the day before, my hair. I was tense, stressed. I chopped onions with the knife Robert had given me. That Japanese one I liked so much. I remembered that knife. Robert had bought it on a trip to Japan. He had paid a fortune for it because he knew how much Ariana liked cooking. Mark arrived from work in a bad mood. He started complaining that the house smelled too much like onion. I explained I was cooking. He told me I could have ventilated better. I told him the windows were open, and then, without any reason, without any real provocation, he told me, "You are useless. You cannot do even the simplest thing without ruining it." I turned to look at him, surprised, and he took that as a challenge. Ariana instinctively touched her jaw, as if the pain were still there. He hit me. A direct punch to the jaw. I fell to the floor. Dad's Japanese knife fell and dented against the tiles. Silent tears fell down my face. I couldn't contain them. I stayed there, on my kitchen floor, bleeding from the mouth, looking at Dad's broken knife, and the only thing I thought was, "Dad, I need you. I do not know what to do without you." I hugged her tighter. Helen was there. She had seen everything. Do you know what she did? What she knelt beside me and told me. Wives have to learn when to keep their mouth closed. I learned that lesson many years ago. Now it is your turn. After that. Mark locked himself in his study. Helen helped me clean the blood. She gave me ice for my jaw. She taught me how to cover the bruise. Yellow concealer first, then your skin tone, then powder. She explained with all the calm in the world, as if it were a normal beauty tutorial. I asked her if she had gone through this, if her husband had ever hit her. She looked me directly in the eyes and told me, "No, dear, I was smarter. I learned to control the situation before it escalated." The pieces began to fit in my head. Helen had not been a victim. Helen had been a perpetrator, and now she was raising a second generation of violence, with Mark as her tool. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked, although I knew the answer. "Because I was ashamed, Mom. Because all my life I saw you defending other women. Because you are strong, unbreakable, brave. How was I going to tell you that I, your daughter, had become exactly the kind of woman you rescue? Besides," she continued, "Mark always apologized afterwards. He always promised to change. He always convinced me that it had been my fault for provoking him. And part of me was still in love with the man I met 5 years ago. I kept waiting for that man to return. But he was not going to return. No, because that man never existed. It was a mask, and the mask fell off when I was already trapped." We remained silent for a long time. The clock in the living room struck 3 in the morning. "What is going to happen now?" Ariana finally asked. "Now," I said with a determination I hadn't felt in years. "Now we are going to make sure that Mark and Helen face the consequences of each of their actions. We are going to use every legal tool we have, and we are going to get your life back. What if he gets out? What if he looks for me? He is not going to get out, not if I can help it. And if he does, he is going to have a restraining order so solid that he won't even be able to think about you without breaking the law." Ariana finally smiled, a small smile, weak, but real. "I missed you, Mom. I missed this version of you. The warrior. I never left daughter. I was just asleep for a while. But I woke up. That night, the two of us fell asleep in her bed, hugging like when she was 5 years old, and storms scared her. But this time, the storm had already passed, or so we thought, because what we didn't know was that Mark and Helen were not going to give up so easily, and that the real battle was just beginning. I still wonder if I did the right thing calling the police that night, or if I should have planned more carefully. And you, what would you have done in my place? The days after the arrest were strange, strangely silent, strangely peaceful, as if the world had pressed pause. Ariana stayed with me at the house. We didn't talk much about going back to the house in the hills. Neither of us wanted to face that conversation yet, in the mornings. I made coffee just like Robert did. Ariana sat at the kitchen counter, wrapped in one of my robes, looking out the window towards the garden. Sometimes we talked, more frequently. We remained in a comfortable silence. That type of silence that only exists between people who know each other deeply. It was the 4th day after the arrest when the first call came. I was in my study, reviewing documents to prepare the formal case against Mark and Helen, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I usually do not answer unknown numbers, but something made me press the green button. Attorney Vance. It was a woman's voice, older, refined, with that tone of authority that comes from years of privilege. Yes, who is speaking? My name is Christine Davis. I am a close friend of Helen. Of course she was. How can I help you? Rather, I can help you. Attorney. I understand there was a misunderstanding between your daughter and my dear friend Mark. A misunderstanding. She called 3 blows to the face a misunderstanding. Mrs. Davis, with all due respect, there was no misunderstanding. There was an act of domestic violence that I witnessed directly and that is documented by the authorities. Oh, attorney, please. You are a woman of the world. You know how young marriages are. There are fights. There are tensions. That does not mean you should destroy the life of a successful man for a moment of what. I interrupted her. My voice sounded colder than I intended. A moment of what exactly? Silence on the other end. What she tried to say continued with a more cautious tone. It is just that Helen has told me a lot about her son. He is a good man, hardworking, devoted. And your daughter? Well, Helen mentions that Ariana can be somewhat challenging. There it was. The narrative I knew was coming. The victim provoked the abuser. The victim deserved it. The victim is the real problem. Mrs. Davis, I am going to be very clear. I have no interest in discussing my daughter's character with you or anyone else. My daughter was a victim of violence, period, and both Mark and Helen are going to face the full legal consequences of their actions. That would be very unfortunate, she said. And now her voice had a threatening nuance. Mark comes from a very well-connected family. His uncle is a magistrate in the Superior Court. His cousin works in the Attorney General's office. It would be a shame if this matter became complicated for you and your legal practice. A veiled threat. How predictable. Mrs. Davis, I have been in this profession for 32 years. I have faced threats from narcos, from corrupt politicians, from powerful businessmen. If you think I am going to back down because Mark's uncle is a magistrate, you clearly do not know who you are talking to. Besides, I continued, every word of this conversation is being recorded, as is my legal right, and any attempt at intimidation or interference with an active case constitutes obstruction of justice. Do you wish to continue? She hung up immediately. I sighed and saved the recording in 3 different locations: my phone, my computer, and the cloud. 32 years had taught me to document absolutely everything. Ariana appeared in the study doorway. Who was it I told her about the call? I saw her face pale. Mom. Christine Davis is one of the most influential women in the neighborhood. If she is on Helen's side, it does not matter whose side she is on. Justice does not work by social connections. But even as I said those words, I knew they were not completely true. Justice should work like that. But in reality, connections mattered. Power mattered. Money mattered. And Mark, apparently, had more connections than I had anticipated. The second call came that same afternoon. This time it was my assistant at the firm. Lucy. She sounded nervous. Attorney, I need to tell you something. A man arrived an hour ago. He said he was Mark's lawyer. He left this. She sent me a photo by WhatsApp. It was a lawsuit. A lawsuit for defamation, false accusation, and moral damages. Against me. Against Ariana. They were asking for $2 million in compensation. He also left something else. Lucy continued, a temporary court order suspending the restraining order against Mr. Mark, signed by Magistrate Henry, his uncle. Of course, how is it possible, I asked, although I already knew the answer. Favors, calls between friends, the system working for whoever had the right connections. It is not legal, I said. I am going to appeal immediately. Lucy, yes. Contact Magistrate Hernandez. She owes me a favor. I need her to review this case personally. I will do it. I hung up and stared at the lawsuit on my phone. $2 million, an amount designed to intimidate, to scare, to make people give up. But I was not people. Ariana entered the study again. She had heard part of the conversation. Mom, This is getting out of control. Maybe we should what? I looked directly at her, back down. Let him get away with it. Allow him to continue hitting you because he has a magistrate uncle. No. But $2 million, Mom. That could ruin us. They are not going to win that lawsuit. It is an intimidation tactic, pure and simple. But I saw the fear in Ariana's eyes, and for the first time I saw something else. Doubt. Daughter. Look at me. She did, although with effort. Are you thinking about going back to him? Silence. Ariana, answer me. I do not know, she whispered. I do not know, Mom. All this is too much. The calls, the lawsuits, the threats. And Mark. Mark has been writing to me. My blood froze for the second time that week. What he writes to me from his lawyer's phone, long messages. He says he is sorry, that he is in therapy, that he finally understood what he did wrong, that Helen is also receiving psychological help, that if I give him one more chance, he is going to prove he can change. Ariana, I know what you are going to say. I know it is manipulation. I know he is probably lying. But Mom, her eyes filled with tears. What if this time it is true? What if he really is going to change? We were married 3 years. That has to mean something. I got up from my desk and took my daughter's hands in mine. Do you know how many times I have heard that same story? How many women have sat exactly where you are now, saying exactly the same words? But they are not me. You are right. They are not. Because many of them did not have the luck to have someone to help them get out. Many of them went back. And do you know what happened? Ariana shook her head. But I think she already knew the answer. Some are in hospitals, some are in wheelchairs, some are in cemeteries. Mark would not kill me. That is exactly what all of them thought. We remained silent. I could see the internal battle on my daughter's face, the rational part fighting against the emotional part, the part that knew the truth against the part that still wanted to believe in the fairy tale. Let me show you something, I said. I took her to my home office, opened my computer and showed her statistics, cold, hard, undeniable numbers. 70% of women who return to their abuser after the first serious incident suffer more severe violence. 43% end up in the hospital within the first year. And look at this number. I pointed to a figure in red on the screen. 1-200 women died last year from partner violence. 1-200. Each of them believed their partner was going to change. Each of them thought it was different. Ariana looked at the screen with glassy eyes. But I also have other numbers. I continued. Women who got out, women who reported, women who rebuilt their lives. 87% report better quality of life 2 years later. 93% say it was the best decision of their life. And the other 7%, some cases went back before we could help them completely. Some faced economic difficulties, but none. Ariana died. My daughter let herself fall onto the sofa in my office. You just do not understand, Mom. It is not just physical fear. It is everything. The house we bought together, the plans we had, the friends we made as a couple, the family we were going to build. If I leave him, I lose all that. No, I said firmly. If you leave him, you gain your life. Everything else is replaceable. Your life is not. But I feel so guilty, as if I were exaggerating, as if 3 blows were not enough reason to destroy a marriage. And there it was, the denial, the minimization, the syndrome I had seen in hundreds of cases. Ariana, look at me well. 3 blows. That is 3 blows too many. There is no acceptable number of times someone can hit you. 0 is the correct number. 0. But what will people think? My friends, my colleagues, his family. Do you care more about what strangers think than your own safety? It is not that. It is just that it is complicated. No, daughter. It is simple. He hit you. He is the guilty one. You are the victim. There are no nuances there. Ariana stayed quiet for a long moment. Can I at least read the messages? Can I at least hear what he has to say? Every fiber of my being wanted to say no, wanted to forbid her to have any contact with Mark. but I also knew that if I pressured her too much, I could push her away. "Okay," I said carefully, but with conditions. 1. I read the messages with you. 2. You do not respond without consulting me first. 3. We document everything in case we need to use it legally. Deal. She nodded. That night, sitting in her room. Ariana opened her phone and showed me the messages. There were dozens, all from different numbers. The first said, "Ariana, my love, you do not know how sorry I am. I am destroyed. These days in custody have given me time to think, to really see what I did. I was a monster to you. I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I ask for it anyway. Please, give me a chance to show you I can change. I love you more than my own life." Classic. Self-flagellation followed by declaration of love. The second. I spoke to a psychologist here. He diagnosed me with impulse control disorder related to childhood trauma. I finally understand where my violence comes from. My mother. She hurt me a lot when I was a child. I know it is not an excuse, but it is an explanation. I am working on that. For you. For us. Now blaming his mother. Interesting twist, considering Helen had applauded when he hit Ariana. The third. I saw my lawyer filed a lawsuit against you and your mom. Please. Believe me, I did not want that. It was my family's decision. I just want to resolve this in private, as a couple. Tell them to withdraw the lawsuit. Just give me the chance to talk to you. Face to face, without lawyers, without your mom interfering. There was the real objective. Isolate her from me. Talk in private, where he could manipulate her without witnesses. Do you see the pattern I asked Ariana? Which one first message? He victimizes himself. Second, he blames others for his behavior. Third, he tries to separate you from your support system. This is the manipulator's manual. Chapter 1. But Mom, what if he really is getting help? What if he really wants to change? If he really wanted to change, he would respect the legal process. He would respect your space. He would not be pressuring you to talk in private. He would not be using lawyers to intimidate us while writing you love messages. Ariana knew I was right. I could see it on her face, but I could also see that part of her still wanted to believe in the fantasy. The following days were difficult. Ariana oscillated between moments of clarity and moments of doubt. Some days she was furious with Mark, determined to move forward. Other days she stared at her phone for hours, rereading messages, questioning every decision. I tried to give her space while keeping her safe. It was a delicate balance. One afternoon I found her in the garden, standing in front of the small herb garden Robert had cultivated. The rosemary had grown wild. The thyme had spread all over the flower bed. The mint threatened to invade everything. Dad hated seeing the plants neglected. She said without turning around. I stood beside her. Your father would want you alive and safe. That is all that would matter to him. Sometimes I wish he were still here. He always knew what to say, always knew how to make everything seem simple. Your father was wise, but even he would have struggled with this, not because he didn't know the right answer, but because you were his daughter. And when you love someone, you want them to make their own decisions, even when you know they might be the wrong ones. Ariana turned to look at me. Do you think I am making the wrong decision by doubting I think it is natural to doubt? You were with him 3 years. You built a life with him. You cannot just turn off those feelings like a switch. But what I ask is that you do not confuse the love you felt for him with the danger he represents now. What is the difference? True love makes you feel safe. True love lifts you up. It does not destroy you. What Mark offered you was not love. It was control disguised as love. Ariana nodded slowly. Do you know what is the hardest part? She asked. What accepting that I spent 3 years in love with a lie, that the man I met never existed, that everything was an act designed to trap me. It was not your fault. Daughter, I know in my head, but my heart still does not accept it. I hugged her there, between the overgrown rosemary and the invasive thyme, under the same sky Robert used to look at while cooking roast on Sundays. It is going to hurt for a while, I told her, but the pain means you are healing. It means you are alive. That night, Ariana finally blocked all the numbers Mark had written to her from. It was not easy. She cried while doing it. But she did it. "I am ready," she said. "I am ready to fight. Then we are going to fight." And so we did. The next day, I counterattacked legally. I filed a formal appeal against the suspension of the restraining order. I documented every threat, every call, every message. I contacted Magistrate Hernandez, who reviewed the case and confirmed that her colleague's order had been inappropriate. The restraining order was reinstated, with even stricter terms. Mark could not get within 500 meters of Ariana. He could not contact her directly or indirectly. He could not send third parties to talk to her. Any violation would mean immediate arrest. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. I also filed a countersuit for aggravated domestic violence, threats, and psychological damage. I asked not for $2, but for $8 million in compensation for Ariana. Not because we needed the money, but to send a message. They were not going to intimidate us. They were not going to scare us. They were not going to beat us. But while I fought in the courts, Mark and Helen fought on another battlefield, one I did not anticipate, one that almost destroyed us. The social war began 3 weeks after the arrest. It was subtle at first, so subtle I almost didn't notice. Ariana had started going out of the house more. Small steps. She went to the supermarket. She went to her beauty salon. She was trying to recover some normality while we waited for court hearings. She returned from the salon one afternoon with a pale face. "What happened?" I asked immediately. "Olga," she said. Olga was her stylist for 5 years, a cheerful woman who always had stories to tell. Olga behaved strangely, cold, distant. She barely spoke to me during the entire cut. Maybe she was having a bad day. "No, Mom, it was more than that. When I was paying, another client I know, Fern, arrived. We have seen each other there dozens of times. We always say hello. But today she saw me and literally turned around. She pretended she was looking for something in her purse, until I left. A bad feeling settled in my stomach. Did you say something? Did you ask?" I asked Olga if I had done something wrong. She just shook her head and told me she was in a hurry because her next appointment was about to arrive. But Mom, her schedule was empty. I saw it the next day. Ariana received a message from her best friend from university, Patty, or who had been her best friend. The message said, "Ariana, I am sorry, but I think we need to take some time. My husband works in the same industry as Mark, and he says this whole situation is very complicated. I cannot afford to be involved. I hope you understand. I wish you the best." Ariana showed me the message with trembling hands. Patty and I were roommates for 4 years in college. 4 years, Mom. She was my maid of honor at my wedding. And now she abandons me because her husband says it is complicated. People are afraid of difficult situations, I said, although the rage grew in my chest, especially when there is power and influence involved. It is not just Patty. Look, she showed me her Instagram. She had lost almost 100 followers in the last few days. Her last post, a photo of a sunset she had taken from my garden, had only 3 likes. Before, she used to receive more than 200. I checked the comments on her old posts. Someone had been leaving anonymous messages. "Aren't you ashamed of destroying a good man's life? We all know you provoked the situation and now play the victim. Your mother-in-law told me the truth. You are a manipulator. When did these comments start?" About a week ago. I delete them, but they keep appearing. They come from different accounts every time. It was an organized campaign. I recognized it immediately. I had seen this tactic before in other high-profile cases. "Helen," I said, "do you think she is behind this? I am sure." And she was right. 2 days later, my assistant Lucy called me urgently. "Attorney, you need to see this." She sent me a link to a blog. It was called The Truth Behind False Accusations. It was anonymous, but professionally designed. The most recent post was titled, "The Case of Mark M." When a corrupt family destroys an innocent man. I read it with growing horror. The article painted Mark as a loving and successful husband, victim of a radical feminist lawyer, me, and her manipulative daughter, Ariana. It said we had invented everything to keep his money, that we had a history of falsely accusing men, that I had been reprimanded for unethical conduct on multiple occasions. Everything was a lie, every word. But it was written convincingly, with anonymous sources, with confidential documents, with photographs taken out of context. There was a photo of Ariana at a party, laughing and holding a glass of wine. The caption said, "Does this look like a traumatized woman, Ariana Vance, after destroying her husband's life?" The photo was from 6 months before the blows, from a work dinner, but without context. It seemed like evidence she was lying. There was another photo of me leaving a court, with a serious expression. The caption, "Elena Vance, known for her aggressive tactics and her hatred towards men, has found in her own son-in-law her next victim. This is pure defamation. I told Lucy, I am going to sue. There is more," she said with a tense voice. The blog has been shared almost 3,000 times in the last 24 hours. It is in Facebook groups, on Twitter. There is even a hashtag, Justice for Mark. I felt dizzy. How is this possible? Someone is paying to promote it, probably bots, fake accounts, paid influencers. This is a professional smear campaign. Attorney. I showed the blog to Ariana. I watched her read it with tears falling down her face. "They are destroying my reputation," she whispered. "They are making it look like everything is my fault. What will they think at my job? What will my colleagues think?" As if the universe had heard her question. Her phone rang. It was her boss at the pharmaceutical company. "Dr. Peters," Ariana put on the speakerphone. "Ariana, we need to talk," said Dr. Peters, without preamble. Her voice sounded uncomfortable. "Certain rumors have reached my ears about your personal situation. Doctor, I can explain. I do not need explanations, but I need you to understand that this company has an image to protect. We cannot afford to be associated with scandal, whether true or false." My blood boiled. "Dr. Peters," I intervened. "This is Elena Vance, Ariana's mother and her legal representative. What you are suggesting sounds dangerously close to wrongful termination based on her condition as a victim of domestic violence, which is protected by law." Silence on the other end. "I am not firing anyone," the doctor finally said. "I am just suggesting that maybe Ariana needs to take some time, a leave of absence. Paid, of course, until all this is resolved." "How long?" Ariana asked with a trembling voice. "Indefinite. For now." She hung up. Ariana let herself fall onto the sofa. "They are destroying me, Mom. Systematically. My social life, my reputation, now my job. What is next, I did not have to wait long to know. That same afternoon, my accountant, Ernest, called me with alarming news. "Elena, we have a problem. Someone filed a complaint with the IRS alleging that you have been evading taxes for years." "What? That is absurd. I know. Your records are impeccable. But now you will have to prove it. They are going to audit your firm, all your cases from the last 5 years, all your accounts. Who filed the complaint? It is anonymous. But Elena, it arrived with documents, forged documents, I am sure. But very well done. Someone invested time and money in this. Helen, Mark, their network of influences. They were attacking from all fronts. How long will the audit take? Months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, your reputation will be under scrutiny. Clients are going to doubt. Cases can be delayed." I hung up and looked at Ariana. "They are playing dirty. What are we going to do? The same thing I always do. Fight with the truth." But even as I said those words, I felt the pressure. For the first time in 32 years of career, I felt true fear, not for me, but for my daughter, for what this war could do to her. The following days brought more revelations. We discovered that Helen had been organizing meetings with the wives of important men in her social circle, telling them her version of the story, that Ariana was an unstable woman who had seduced her son for his money. Irony, considering Ariana had more money than Mark, that I had manipulated her to file false charges, that they, as good women, had to protect their own husbands from false accusations by supporting Mark. It was brilliant, in a twisted sense. Helen had turned the case into a class and gender war, painting herself and her son as victims of a feminist conspiracy, and many women believed her. One afternoon, Ariana received an Instagram message from an account she did not know. The message included photos of our house, photos taken from the street, photos of the windows, photos of the garden. The message said, "Nice house. It would be a shame if something happened to it." I called Commander Miller immediately. "This is direct intimidation," I said. "I need protection. Attorney, I can put extra patrol on your street, but I do not have resources for 24-hour protection. And if something happens, let's hope it doesn't happen. Meanwhile, document everything, install security cameras, and be careful." That night, I installed cameras. I reinforced the locks. I bought a new alarm system. And for the first time in years, I slept with my phone next to the bed, ready to call 911 at any moment. Ariana was in her room, but she wasn't sleeping. I could hear her crying quietly through the wall. I got up and went to her room. I found her sitting on her bed, surrounded by old photographs, photos of her and Patty, photos of her with her colleagues from work, photos of her wedding. I was thinking, she said without looking at me, about how everything can be destroyed so quickly. 2 months ago, I had a life. I had friends, a career, a house, a husband. I thought I knew who I was. And now I have nothing. You have me. I know. And I thank you. But Mom, I am tired. I am so tired of fighting, of defending myself, of justifying my existence, of proving over and over again that I am not lying. She turned to look at me, and in her eyes I saw something that terrified me. I saw surrender. Sometimes I think she continued that it would be easier just to call him. Ask for forgiveness. Tell him I exaggerated. Go back to him. At least that way all this would end. Ariana, no. Why not look at what is happening? They are destroying us. You, me, everything Dad built, your firm, your reputation, my career, everything. Is it worth it? Is it really worth 3 blows? I sat next to her and took her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. Listen to me well. This is exactly what they want. They want you to give up. They want you to believe that you are the problem. They want you to think that abuse is preferable to the battle. But I am so tired. I know, my love. I know. But you have to understand something. This darkness you feel now, this exhaustion, this fear, it is temporary. But if you go back to him, if you give up, that will be permanent, or until he kills you. He would not kill me. You do not know that. And you cannot risk your life betting that his violence has limits. Because I guarantee you, daughter, that it has none. Ariana leaned on my shoulder, like she did when she was little, and the world seemed too big for her. How did you do it, Mom? How did you fight for so many women for so many years without getting tired? I did get tired. I got tired all the time. But your father reminded me why I did it. He told me, Elena, every woman you save is someone's daughter. It is the daughter we would want someone to save, if Ariana ever needed it. I paused, feeling the weight of the irony. I never thought it would be our own daughter who needed saving. But here we are, and I swear by your father's memory that I am not going to let Mark win. I am not going to let him destroy you, even if I have to fight against his whole army of liars. And if we lose, we are not going to lose. But what if we lose? I looked her directly in the eyes. Then we will lose knowing that we fought with the truth, that we did not give up, that we did not allow fear to dictate our decisions. And that, daughter, that is already a victory in itself. We stayed there, hugging, while outside the city continued its indifferent rhythm. The next day, I received a call that would change everything. It was from Commander Miller. Attorney, I need you to come to the station. Now. What happened? We have new evidence. Evidence that you are going to want to see personally. What kind of evidence? An anonymous package arrived this morning, with documents, photographs, and recordings. My heart accelerated. Recordings of what conversations between Mark and his mother. planning exactly how to destroy Ariana, how to fabricate false evidence, how to use their contacts to ruin her reputation. Where did the package come from? We do not know. It was left at the station entrance during the night. No sender. But attorney, the content is gold. It is exactly what we need to strengthen the case. I am on my way. I hung up and looked at Ariana. Get dressed. We have to go to the station. What happened? Someone is helping us, and I think we are finally going to see the full truth. In the car to the station, my mind was working at full speed. Who had sent that package? Why was it someone from Mark's circle who had had enough? Was it someone with a personal vendetta? It did not matter. What mattered was that we finally had the missing pieces. And I was about to discover that the truth was much darker than I had imagined. Because what those recordings revealed was not just a plan to destroy us. It was evidence of something much worse, something that confirmed my worst suspicions about Helen, and something that explained why Mark was exactly the way he was. I still wonder if I did the right thing by moving forward. Sometimes justice has a very high price. And you, what would you have done in my place? The evidence room at the station smelled of old coffee and paper. Commander Miller was waiting for us with a cardboard box on the table, a simple box, unmarked. Sealed with common tape, nothing special in appearance, but I knew that what it contained could change everything. It arrived at 4 a.m, explained the commander while putting on latex gloves. Security cameras caught a person leaving it, medium height, completely covered with a hoodie and cap, impossible to identify. Fingerprints, I asked, none useful. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. He opened the box slowly. Inside were manila folders, several USB drives, and a large manila envelope. "Let's start with this," he said, taking out one of the USB drives and connecting it to a computer. The screen lit up. It was an audio file. The commander pressed play. Helen's voice filled the room. It was unmistakable. That sugary tone I had learned to recognize. "Do not be naive, Mark. That brat and her mother are not going to stop. They have to understand who we are, who we have always been." Mark's voice responded. "I already sent her the messages like you said. She is doubting Mom. I can feel it. If I keep pushing, she is going to give in. It is not enough for her to give in. We need to destroy her credibility completely. I already hired the PR team. They are going to handle the blog, social media, everything, by the weekend. Half the city is going to think Ariana is a calculating liar, and the lawyer, the mother. That one is more complicated. She has a solid reputation, but everyone has secrets. I already put my private investigator to look. If he doesn't find anything real, we will fabricate something. A false complaint to the IRS is already in process." Ariana covered her mouth with her hand. Tears ran down her face. The recording continued. "Mark, listen to me well. This that you are living is exactly what I lived with your father. He also wanted to challenge me. He also thought he could control me. And what did you do?" A long pause, so long that I thought the recording had cut off. What I had to do. What you have to be willing to do if Ariana does not come to her senses. "Mom, do not call me Mom with that tone. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. After your father, after I had to deal with him, I worked double shifts to give you everything. And now you are going to let a spoiled little girl and her mother destroy what we built now?" "Of course not." "Then listen to the plan." The commander paused the recording. "There are 4 more hours," he said. "Conversations recorded over the last 3 weeks, all in Helen's house. According to the ambient sound analysis, someone planted listening devices there, who Ariana asked with a broken voice. We do not know, but whoever did it gave us exactly what we needed." He opened one of the folders. It contained photographs. The first was of an official document, a death certificate. Ray Harrison, Reed the commander, Helen's husband, died 11 years ago from severe head trauma after falling down the stairs of his residence back east. He moved to the next photo. It was a forensic report. The original report indicated accidental death. But look at this. He pointed to a section highlighted in yellow. The coroner who did the autopsy left marginal notes. Notes that never entered the official report. Says injury pattern inconsistent with accidental fall. Multiple contusions on the head suggest repeated blows. Recommend additional investigation. Why was it not investigated, I asked. Because the case was closed quickly by the prosecutor in charge, a man named Edward Harrison, another Harrison Ray's brother, Mark's uncle. The same one who is now a judge and who tried to suspend the restraining order. The pieces fit with terrible clarity. Helen killed her husband, I said aloud, and the family covered it up. That is what the evidence suggests, confirmed the commander. But there is more. He took out another folder. It contained old photographs. One was of a young man, handsome, smiling next to a much younger Helen. Ray Harrison in 1990, explained the commander. Successful engineer, came from a wealthy family. He married Helen when she was 22, and he was 30. He moved to more photographs, a sequence showing Ray in different eras. His smile was fading progressively. In the last photos, his face showed tension, exhaustion, fear. According to testimonies from neighbors at the time, the marriage was problematic. Helen was extremely controlling. There were reports of screaming, of broken objects, but in those years no one intervened in family matters, and no one thought a woman could be the abuser, I added bitterly. Exactly. Ray's last year of life. Several acquaintances noticed changes in him. He was thinner, more nervous. He confided in a cousin that he wanted a divorce, but that Helen threatened him. She said if he left her, she would make sure he never saw his son. And nobody did anything, the cousin declared in the original investigation. But his testimony was dismissed as speculation without foundation. And after the case was closed, the cousin received threats. He stopped talking about it. Ariana looked at the photos with horror. Mark was 7 years old when his father died, she whispered. He told me he barely remembered him. He said his father was distant, cold, that his mother was the one who really took care of him, protected him. Helen rewrote history, I said. She made Mark believe his father was the bad guy, that she was the victim, the heroine. She raised him with that narrative. The commander nodded. And now Mark reproduces exactly his mother's patterns: control, violence, manipulation. But he sees himself as the justified victim. There was another folder. This one was thinner. This, said the commander with a grave voice, is the most disturbing part. It contained medical records of Mark when he was a child, between 7 and 12 years old. Mark was taken to the emergency room 5 times. 2 broken arms, a fractured rib, multiple bruises. Every time Helen explained they were accidents, that the boy was clumsy, restless. She beat him, said Ariana with horror. She beat her own son. Social workers opened 2 investigations. Both were closed without action. The family had too much influence. So Mark not only witnessed violence, I reasoned aloud, he was a victim of it. Helen molded him from childhood. She taught him that violence is love, that control is care, that victims are guilty. The commander took out the last USB drive. This one, he said, was recorded 3 days ago. It is the most recent conversation we have. He pressed play. Helen's voice sounded different in this one, more relaxed, almost cheerful. Everything is going according to plan, son. The blog has had more than 10,000 visits. Social media is working. There are already entire groups on Facebook saying Ariana is a liar. And the best thing is that she is destroying herself, asking for time off work, isolating herself. She keeps writing to me, Mom, asking if I have communicated with her. She blocked all numbers but keeps checking if I write to her. Perfect. That means she is broken. She is doubting. Give me 2 weeks more and she is going to call you herself, begging you to forgive her. And if she doesn't, then we escalate. I have contacts at the newspaper. We can publish a story about false accusations ruining innocent men's lives. Your case is a central example. And the trial, we are going to win the trial. Your uncle is making sure the case goes to the right judge. And if for some reason it doesn't work, we can always appeal. These types of cases can last years. By the time it ends, Ariana is going to be so exhausted she is going to accept any settlement. And the mother, Elena, Helen's voice hardened. That one is a different problem. She is stubborn. She is not going to give up easily. But everyone has a breaking point, Mark. Everyone. Your father thought he was invincible too. He thought he could challenge me. And look how he ended up. A cold laugh at the bottom of the stairs. Silence on the recording. Mom, did you? Did I what, son? Do you think your mother is capable of doing what is necessary to protect her family? Well, yes, I am. I always have been. And if Elena Vance does not understand that she must back down, she can also have an accident. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. No one threatens my son. No one takes what is ours. I learned it from my own mother, who taught me that weak women are trampled, but strong women do whatever is necessary to survive. Mark, when you have children, you will understand. You would do anything to protect them. Anything. The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. Ariana was trembling visibly. I hugged her while the weight of what we had just heard settled on all of us. It is a confession, I said finally. A confession of murder and a direct threat against me. It is enough to reopen the investigation into Ray Harrison's death, confirmed the commander, and to add charges of serious threats against Helen. But is it admissible in court, I asked. These recordings were obtained without a warrant, without consent. That is the problem, admitted the commander. Technically. No, but we can use them as a basis to obtain legal warrants, to open official investigations, to get testimonies, and the anonymous package. Who sent it I still do not know, but whoever it is has close access to Helen, was in her house long enough to plant devices, knows her routine and wants her to pay. A family member suggested Ariana, possibly, or an employee, or someone who was a victim of Helen in the past, and finally decided to act. I stood up and walked to the room's window. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm, people going to work, children walking to school, vendors setting up their stands. Ordinary life. While we were here, discovering that we had been fighting against something much darker than a simple case of domestic violence. We had been fighting against generations of violence, against a complete family system built on abuse, control, and cover-up. What do we do now? Ariana asked behind me. I turned to look at her. My daughter, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, who had the misfortune of falling in love with the product of this horror. Now, I said, we use every piece of this evidence. We reopen Ray Harrison's investigation. We file additional charges against Helen, and we make sure Mark understands he was raised by a murderer. Do you think that changes anything? Ariana asked. Do you think if Mark knows the truth about his mother? He is going to change? No, I said honestly. Probably not. But he deserves to know the truth, and more importantly, he deserves to have the power he has over you taken away. The commander gathered all the folders. I'm going to start the formal procedures today. But attorney, I need to warn you something. What if we attack Helen this way? If we reopen her husband's case, the entire family is going to counterattack. They are going to use every resource they have. It is going to get ugly. It is already ugly, I replied. It cannot get worse. But I was wrong. It can always get worse. 3 days after receiving the evidence, things escalated in ways I did not anticipate. First, a subpoena arrived from the district attorney, not for Mark or Helen, for Ariana. They accused her of filing a false report. They said there was new evidence that she had fabricated the story of abuse, that she had a financial motive for doing so. How is this possible? Ariana asked, reading the document with trembling hands. Did they not listen to the recordings? The recordings are still being officially processed, I explained. The legal system is slow, and in the meantime, they still have the power to counterattack. The subpoena demanded that Ariana appear for interrogation in 2 weeks. If she didn't, she could be arrested for contempt. It is an intimidation tactic, I said. They want to scare you into dropping the charges. It is working, admitted Ariana. I am terrified. Second, my firm received a visit from IRS auditors. They arrived without warning, with orders to review all my files. Lucy called me in panic. Attorney, they are taking computers, documents, Everything. They say they have a warrant. Let them. I said with calm I didn't feel. Everything is in order. Let them review whatever they want. But I knew what this meant. Weeks, possibly months, without complete access to my files, cases that would be delayed, clients who would lose trust, calculated collateral damage. Third, and this was the most painful. A letter arrived. It was from the State Bar Association. A formal complaint had been filed against me, alleging unethical conduct in Ariana's case. They said I had a conflict of interest representing my own daughter, that I had used my position to exert undue pressure on the authorities. The letter indicated there would be a disciplinary hearing, depending on the result. I could face temporary suspension of my license. 32 years of impeccable career, 32 years defending what is right, and now, for defending my own daughter, my license was at risk. That night I sat in Robert's study, the one we had shared for so many years, his books still on the shelves, his chair still by the desk. I needed his wisdom, his calm, his perspective. I do not know if I can do this. I told the empty space. I do not know if I am strong enough. Of course there was no answer. But then I remembered something Robert used to say when I came home after especially difficult days in court. Elena, justice does not always win. But those who fight for justice never really lose, because the act of fighting itself, of refusing to give up, is already a victory. He was right. He was always right. I got up, dried the tears I hadn't noticed were falling, and went back to the living room where Ariana was sitting, looking at her phone with a lost expression. "Daughter," I said, sitting next to her, "I need you to understand something." She looked at me. "We are going to lose things in this fight. Maybe I lose my license temporarily. Maybe you lose some cases at your work. Maybe we lose friends, reputation, money. Mom, let me finish. We are going to lose things. But there is something we are not going to lose. We are not going to lose your life. We are not going to lose your dignity. We are not going to lose the truth. And when all this ends, when you look back, you are going to be able to live with yourself, because you are going to know you did the right thing, that you did not give up to fear, that you did not allow a violent man and his murderer mother to dictate your destiny." Ariana hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me. Never, my love. Never." We stayed like that, hugging, while outside the sun set over the city. Tomorrow would come with new challenges, new battles, new attempts to destroy us. But tonight, in this moment, we were simply a mother and a daughter, supporting each other, and that, I decided, was enough. Because the most important moral revelation was not about Helen or Mark. It was about us, about our strength, about our resistance, about our absolute refusal to be destroyed. They had power, money, connections. But we had something stronger. We had the truth. And the truth, sooner or later, always finds its way to the light, even if it has to go through all the darkness first. I still wonder if I did the right thing by not giving in to pressure. Sometimes I wonder if protecting my daughter was worth risking everything I built. And you, what would you have done in my place? The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I dressed in my most formal suit, the navy blue one Robert had given me for my 10th anniversary as a lawyer. I applied makeup carefully, covering the dark circles from sleepless nights. I pulled my hair back into an impeccable bun. I had to look like what I was, a professional with 3 decades of unblemished experience, not like a woman on the verge of collapse. Ariana wanted to come with me, but I told her to stay home. I didn't need her to see her mother being judged for the simple act of protecting her. The Bar Association building was downtown, an old building, imposing, with those columns that are supposed to inspire respect for justice. That morning, it only inspired nausea. The hearing room was on the 3rd floor. When I entered, there was a panel of 5 lawyers sitting behind a long table, 3 men, 2 women, all older than me, all with carefully neutral expressions. I recognized 2 of them, Attorney Arthur Mills, a corporate lawyer who had always looked down on those of us dedicated to family cases, and Attorney Patty Ross, who 30 years ago had been my classmate in law school. We hadn't spoken in decades. Attorney Vance, said the president of the panel, a man of almost 70 named Richard Fountain, thank you for appearing, as if I had a choice. I sat in the chair in front of them. Alone, my lawyer, a colleague who had offered to represent me at no cost, was sitting behind me. But this was my battle. This hearing, began Mr. Fountain, has been convened to review a complaint filed against you for alleged unethical conduct in the case against Mr. Mark Harrison. Do you understand the charges? I understand them, I said with a firm voice, and I reject them completely. The complaint alleges that you have a conflict of interest representing your daughter, that you used your personal influence with authorities to accelerate an arrest without due investigation, and that you have conducted a defamation campaign against Mr. Harrison and his family. Every word was a carefully constructed lie, but presented with that formal legal language, it sounded almost credible. Mr. Fountain, I said, my daughter was a victim of domestic violence in my presence. I was a direct witness. There is no conflict of interest in protecting a victim, especially when that victim is your own daughter. In fact, any mother who did not act in those circumstances would be the one who deserved to be questioned. But as a lawyer, intervened Mr. Mills with that condescending tone that irritated me so much, you should have known that the most appropriate thing was to recommend your daughter seek independent representation. Your personal involvement compromises objectivity. Objectivity, I repeated, feeling the rage rise. You want to talk about objectivity when my daughter was bleeding on a dining room floor, when her husband had just hit her 3 times in front of me, Attorney Vance, said Mr. Fountain in a warning tone. Maintain a professional tone. I took a deep breath, held back the words I really wanted to say. Excuse me. What I'm trying to explain is that I acted within my rights and responsibilities as a citizen, as a witness, and as a mother. At no time did I violate the ethical norms of our profession. Patty Ross spoke for the first time. Elena, she said, and the use of my first name took me by surprise. I understand your position, but you must understand that this situation is complicated. Mr. Harrison comes from a respectable family. His uncle is a judge. His cousin is a prosecutor. There are considerations. Considerations, I interrupted her. Considerations about what, Patty? About whether a rich and connected man can hit a woman without consequences. I am not saying that. Then what are you saying? Uncomfortable silence. Mr. Mills took the floor again. What Mrs. Ross is trying to explain is that your passion for these domestic violence cases, although admirable, can sometimes cloud your judgment. You have built a whole career on being the defender of women. And now, conveniently, your own daughter becomes a case. Conveniently? My voice came out higher than I intended. Are you suggesting my daughter invented being beaten so I could have another case? I am suggesting the situation raises legitimate questions. The only legitimate questions here, I said, getting up from my chair, are why we are having this hearing in the first place, who filed the complaint, who financed it, and what connections do they have with the Harrison family, Attorney Vance. Sit down, ordered Mr. Fountain. I did not sit down. I have been in this profession for 32 years. I have defended 218 women. I have won 186 cases. I have helped pass 3 victim protection laws. My record speaks for itself. And now, I continued, for the first time in my career, I face a disciplinary hearing, not for malpractice, not for negligence, not for dishonesty, but for the unforgivable crime of protecting my own daughter from a violent man. If that is grounds to suspend my license, then suspend it. But let it be clear on the record that this panel chose to side with an abuser over a victim, with power over justice. Attorney Vance, began Mr. Fountain, I have not finished. I have evidence. Recordings. That prove that Helen Harrison, mother of the accused, admitted to murdering her own husband 11 years ago, that she explicitly threatened my life, that she orchestrated a smear campaign against my daughter and me, all that is being investigated by the corresponding authorities, said Mr. Fountain. It is not relevant to this hearing. Not relevant, I laughed without humor. It is completely relevant. Because it proves that this complaint is part of a pattern of intimidation and manipulation. And you, I looked at each of them directly, are allowing yourselves to be used. I finally sat down. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. The panel looked at each other. There was an exchange of looks I couldn't decipher. "We are going to take a 30-minute recess," announced Mr. Fountain, "to deliberate." They left the room. My lawyer approached immediately. "Elena, that was intense. I do not care. They needed to hear it. Yes. But attacking the panel directly. I didn't attack them. I told them the truth. I got up and went out into the hallway. I needed air. I needed space. I took out my phone and called Ariana. Mom, how is it going? Honestly, I do not know. I said what I had to say. Now it is a matter of waiting. Do you think they are going to? I do not know, daughter. But if they do, we will find another way. There is always another way. I love you, Mom. I love you too. I hung up and leaned against the hallway wall. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, someone was standing in front of me. It was an older man, maybe 80 years old, with a cane and a suit that had seen better days. "Attorney Vance," he asked with a trembling voice. "Yes. Can I help you?" "No. I came to help you." I looked at him more closely. There was something familiar in his face, but I couldn't place it. "Excuse me, do we know each other? Not directly, but I knew Ray Harrison. He was my first cousin." My breathing stopped. "I am Albert Harrison," he continued. "I was the person who testified in the original investigation into Ray's death, the person who was later threatened into silence." "Did you send the package?" I asked quietly. He nodded slowly. "I have lived with that guilt for 11 years. I knew what Helen had done to Ray. I saw him change in those last months. I saw the fear in his eyes, and when he died, I knew it hadn't been an accident." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was afraid. Helen threatened me. She told me if I kept talking, I would have the same accident as Ray. And I was a coward. I let her get away with it." His eyes filled with tears. "But when I saw what she was doing to that girl, to your daughter, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I hired a private investigator. I put listening devices in Helen's house when I went to a family dinner. I recorded everything for 3 weeks." "Why anonymously?" "Because I'm still afraid, because I have grandchildren, because the Harrison family has power. But at least now the truth is out there. At least now there is a chance for Helen to pay." I looked at this old man, trembling with his cane, who had found the courage to do the right thing after 11 years. "Thank you," I said simply. "Thank you for giving Ray a voice after so long. It was the least I could do. He was a good man. He didn't deserve what happened to him." "Would you be willing to testify?" "Officially." He hesitated. "If they guarantee me protection, then yes. It is time for this to end. It is time for Ray to have justice." I gave him my card. I promised him that Commander Miller would get in touch to organize protection. When he left, limping with his cane down the hallway, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The 30 minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Finally, they called me back to the room. The 5 members of the panel were sitting again. Their expressions were illegible. Mr. Fountain spoke. "Attorney Vance, this panel has carefully reviewed the evidence presented, the allegations against you, and your defense arguments." He made a pause that seemed eternal. "We have decided to temporarily suspend this hearing." But I couldn't contain my surprise. Given the new revelations about the Harrison case and the evidence being processed by criminal authorities, we consider it premature to issue a judgment on your professional conduct at this time. The hearing will be postponed indefinitely. Pending the resolution of the criminal case, your license will remain active during this time. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. It was a postponement, a temporary truce. However, continued Mr. Fountain, it must remain clear that if at any moment it is determined that you acted unethically, this hearing will resume. "I understand," I said. "Can I leave?" I got up. I said nothing else. There was nothing else to say. When I left the building, the sun was at its highest point. It was hot. The city bustled with normal life. I called Ariana immediately. They didn't suspend me, I said as soon as she answered. They postponed the decision. Is that good? It is the best we could hope for today. I am going to make coffee when you arrive. The pot roast style coffee Dad liked. Wait, coffee. Pot coffee. Like Dad liked. Perfect daughter. Perfect. But while I drove back to the suburbs, I didn't feel relieved. I felt exhausted. Exhausted from fighting. Exhausted from defending us. Exhausted from having to justify every action, every decision, every word. I arrived home and found Ariana in the kitchen. As she had promised, the smell of coffee, cinnamon, brown sugar, filled the house. It reminded me of Robert. It reminded me of quiet Sundays. It reminded me of a life that no longer existed. "Mom," said Ariana, pouring me a cup. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I lied. "Just tired. There is something I need to tell you." Something in her tone put me on alert. "What happened?" "I received a call from the pharmaceutical company." My stomach sank. "They officially fired me. They said my indefinite leave has become contract termination by mutual agreement, according to them, to avoid scandal." "Ariana, it is not your fault, Mom. It is just that. It is just that I am losing everything. My career, my friends, my reputation. Everything I worked for 10 years, is crumbling." I watched her sit at the kitchen counter, with that same defeated posture I had seen in hundreds of victims throughout my career, and I realized something terrible. We were losing. Not legally, not yet. But we were losing the war of attrition. Helen and Mark didn't need to win in court. They just needed to destroy us slowly, take away everything that mattered until there was nothing left to fight for. It was a brilliant strategy in its cruelty, and it was working. That night, while Ariana slept. I sat in Robert's study again. I do not know how much more we can resist. I told his photograph on the desk, "We are losing everything, and I don't even know if in the end it is going to be worth it." Of course. There was no answer. But then, my phone rang. It was Commander Miller. "Attorney, I need you to come to the station, tomorrow early. It is urgent. What happened? Mark Harrison violated the restraining order. He was arrested 2 hours ago." My heart accelerated. "What did he do?" "He went to the house in the hills, the house he shared with Ariana. Apparently he didn't know we had installed surveillance after the threats. The cameras caught everything, caught what the commander paused. They caught him destroying the house, breaking windows, destroying furniture, and writing messages on the walls." "What kind of messages?" "Threats. Very specific threats against Ariana and against you." I closed my eyes. Where is he now in custody? This time he is not going to get out easily. Not with violation of a restraining order, destruction of property, and threats documented on video. I will be there first thing. I hung up and stared at the darkness outside the window. Mark had lost control. He had crossed the line so obviously that not even his family could protect him this time. It was a victory. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, because I knew this wasn't over. That Helen was still out there, free, dangerous, and that while she existed, none of us would be truly safe. The house in the hills looked like a war zone. We arrived early in the morning, Ariana and I, escorted by Commander Miller. The police had cordoned off the area. Neighbors peeked from their windows, some taking photographs with their phones. The scandal Mark so feared creating. He had finally created it himself. The front door was splintered, as if it had been kicked repeatedly. When we entered, the smell of spray paint hit me immediately. The walls were covered with words. "Liar. Bitch. I am going to kill you. This is not over." Written with red spray, like blood. Ariana covered her mouth, holding back a sob. The furniture was destroyed. The sofa she had chosen with such care, slashed with something sharp. The dining table, where that fatal dinner had occurred, overturned. The fine porcelain plates that had been my mother's, shattered on the floor and in the kitchen. We found the worst part, The Japanese knife Robert had given Ariana, the one that had been damaged that first time Mark hit her. Now it was stuck in the wooden table. Next to it, a handwritten note. "For when you return." The implications were clear and terrifying. "Everything is documented," said Commander Miller, showing me his tablet with the security footage. He arrived at 11:30 at night. He spent 3 hours here, systematically destroying every room. In the video, I could see Mark moving like he was possessed, screaming, crying, breaking. At some moments, he talked to himself, as if he had a conversation with someone who wasn't there. "Is he under the influence of something?" I asked. "Toxicology analysis pending, but his behavior suggests a psychotic episode, or simply uncontrolled rage." Ariana walked through the house like in a trance, touching the remains of her previous life. "I bought that lamp in Oaxaca," she murmured, looking at the pieces of ceramic on the floor. "On our first anniversary, I thought we were going to grow old together in this house." She knelt next to the fragments, touching them carefully, as if they were sacred relics of a life that no longer existed. "Ariana," I said softly, kneeling next to her, "this is not your life. This was an illusion. Your real life is waiting for you. A life without fear, without violence, without having to measure every word. But Mom, look at this. Look at what my marriage became. Walls with threats, destroyed furniture. How did we get here? Because you married a sick man, raised by a sick woman. It is not your fault. But I chose him. I said yes. I ignored all the signs, because he deceived you. Because that is what abusers do. They present themselves as Prince Charming until the trap closes." I helped her up. Her knees were trembling. "Do you want to take anything?" I asked. "Anything you want to keep?" She looked around. The destroyed living room, the ruined dining room, the kitchen stained with hate. "No," she said finally. "I do not want anything from here. This house is cursed with his violence, with his rage. Let it rot." It was the first time I heard true clarity in her voice since all this started. "But there is something I need to do," she continued. "What I need to see him. Mark. Yes, I need to see him in the eyes one last time. I need to tell him what I could never tell him when we were together." Commander Miller was listening to us. "I can arrange it," he said. "He is in custody. He has the right to visits from his wife. Technically, they are still married. But, attorney." He looked directly at me. "Are you sure it is a good idea?" "No," I admitted. "I am not sure, but it is Ariana's decision." We looked at my daughter. "I am sure," she said with a firm voice. "I need to do this. For me." 2 hours later, we were in the prison visiting room. Ariana had changed clothes. She had put on a simple but elegant dress. She had applied light makeup. She looked beautiful, strong, nothing like the broken woman Mark expected to find. I was sitting outside, watching through the glass of a door. Commander Miller was next to me, along with 2 security guards, if he makes any threatening move. The commander assured me, "We enter immediately." I nodded. Mark entered the room handcuffed. He had lost weight. He had deep dark circles. His prison clothes were too big for him. He no longer looked like the successful and well-dressed engineer I had met 5 years ago. He looked like what he was, a man destroyed by his own violence. When he saw Ariana, his face went through a sequence of emotions: surprise, relief, hope. "Ariana," he said, his voice breaking. "You came. I knew you would come. I knew you still loved me." Ariana did not respond immediately. She just looked at him with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Sit down, Mark," she said finally. He obeyed, sitting in front of her with his hands handcuffed on the table. "I made a mistake." He began immediately. "A terrible mistake last night. I do not know what happened to me. It was like something broke inside me. But I can fix it. We can fix everything. If only you forgive me. I did not come to forgive you." Ariana interrupted him. The silence that followed was absolute. "What I did not come to forgive you, Mark. I came to tell you the truth. The truth I should have told you 3 years ago." "Ariana, please, no." Now it is my turn to speak. For the first time in our marriage, you are going to listen to me without interrupting, without screaming, without hitting." Mark closed his mouth. Something in Ariana's tone must have told him that this time was different. "When I met you," she continued, "I thought you were everything I had always dreamed of. Smart, successful, charming. My friends envied me. My family admired you. I thought I had won the lottery. But little by little, so gradually I barely noticed, you started changing me, molding me into something that wasn't me. You criticized my clothes. You questioned my friendships. You controlled my time. And I allowed it because I thought that was love. I thought your jealousy meant you cared." "Ariana, everything I did was because I loved you." "No," she said firmly. "What you felt was not love. It was possession. I was not your wife. I was your property, something you thought you could control, manipulate, punish when I didn't obey." Mark shook his head, tears beginning to fall. "No, it is not like that. I love you. I have always loved you. Did you love me when you hit me for spilling a drop of water? Did you love me when you locked me in our room because I arrived late from work? Did you love me when you destroyed the house we bought together and wrote death threats on the walls? Every question was a stab. Mark shrank with each one. Your mother taught you that is how you love," continued Ariana, "because that was how she loved your father, with control, with violence, with the belief that she had rights over his life. Do not bring my mother into this. Your mother murdered your father, Mark. She killed him and made you believe it was an accident. She raised you with that lie. She taught you that violence was normal, that control was affection, that victims were guilty. That is a lie," screamed Mark, getting up from his chair. The guards tensed, ready to intervene. "Sit down," ordered Ariana with supernatural calm. And to my surprise, Mark obeyed. "We have recordings," said Ariana, "of your mother admitting what she did, threatening to do the same to me, with you on the side, listening, supporting her. She wasn't serious. Yes, she was serious. And deep down, you know it. You have always known it. That is why you never questioned the accident story. That is why you never really investigated how your father died." Mark crumbled, literally folded over the table, sobbing. "I do not know who I am without her," he admitted between tears. "I do not know how to be. She is all I have." "And that," said Ariana, "is precisely the tragedy, because you could have been different. You could have chosen to be the man you pretended to be when we met, but you chose to be like her." "What am I going to do?" Mark asked, with the voice of a lost child. "What is going to become of me, I do not know. And honestly, Mark, it is no longer my problem." Ariana stood up. "I came here for a reason. To tell you that I am no longer afraid of you, that I no longer blame myself for what you did to me, that I understand you were both victim and perpetrator. But that doesn't excuse what you did. I came to tell you that I am starting divorce proceedings, that I am going to recover my house, my money, my life, and that never, never again are you going to have power over me. Ariana, please, do not go. Goodbye, Mark. I hope one day, in some prison cell, you find the real therapy you need, not for me, but for you. And for any woman who has the misfortune of crossing your path in the future." She turned around and walked towards the door. Ariana screamed Mark. "Ariana, I love you. I will always love you." She stopped at the door without turning around. "Love does not hurt, Mark. What you felt was never love." And she left. When the door closed behind her, I saw her transform. The shoulders she had kept tense during the entire conversation finally relaxed. The tears she had been holding back finally fell, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. I hugged her in the hallway, while Mark kept screaming her name from the visiting room. "It is over," I whispered to her. "It is over." "Yes," she responded. "It is over." That night, back in the house in the suburbs, Ariana entered Robert's study, the same one where I had spent so many nights seeking his silent advice. I found her there, looking at the photograph of him on the desk. "Do you know what is the strangest thing?" she said without looking at me. "During all these months, I thought Dad would feel disappointed in me for having married Mark, for not having seen the signs, for needing to be rescued. Your father would never have been disappointed in you. I know now, because Dad taught me what real love was. He showed me what a marriage should be. Mutual respect, unconditional support, constant kindness. That is why I knew something was wrong with Mark," she continued, "because Dad set the standard, and Mark never came close to reaching it." She turned to me. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up, for fighting when I couldn't, for being strong when I was broken. Always, daughter. Always." We hugged in that study that smelled of old books and coffee, surrounded by the memories of a man who had taught us what it meant to love correctly. The next day, we formally initiated divorce proceedings. We also filed additional charges for destruction of property and threats with the security recordings. It was an open and shut case. Mark now faced multiple charges: domestic violence, violation of restraining order, destruction of property, threats. His family's lawyers tried to negotiate, but this time there was no room for negotiation. The evidence was too clear, the crimes too obvious. But Helen remained. She was still free, waiting for trial for her participation as an accomplice in the violence against Ariana. But now, with Albert Harrison's testimony and the recordings confessing Ray's murder, the prosecutor's office was reopening that investigation too. One afternoon, a week after the confrontation with Mark, I received an unexpected call. It was Helen, Attorney Vance. She said with that voice I had learned to hate, "We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. On the contrary, we have a lot to talk about. My freedom, my son's future, and what I am willing to do to protect both things." "Are you threatening me?" "No, dear. I am offering you a deal. I do not make deals with murderers." "How dramatic. Listen, I know you have recordings. I know that traitor Albert sold me out, but I also know those recordings are not admissible in court. They were obtained illegally. They may not be directly admissible, but they give grounds for a full investigation. And when that investigation ends, you are going to pass the rest of your life in prison. Maybe or maybe not. My family has resources, good lawyers, connections. We can prolong this for years, decades. What is your point? My point is that we are both tired. You, your daughter, me, my son. All of us have lost something in this war. Wouldn't it be better for everyone if we simply ended this? How withdraw the charges against Mark? Convince Ariana to accept an amicable divorce without compensation, and I will make sure the investigation regarding Ray stalls. We all go on with our lives." "Are you crazy? Do you think I am going to let your son escape without consequences?" "Not without consequences. With reduced consequences. 1 year in prison instead of 6. Mandatory therapy. Permanent restraining order. Something that allows him to rebuild his life eventually. He hit my daughter. He threatened her with death. He destroyed her property. And you have destroyed her life, her reputation, her career. Isn't that enough?" For a moment, just a moment, I considered the proposal, not because I thought it was fair, but because I was tired, so deeply tired of fighting. But then I remembered Ariana's words in the visiting room, "Love does not hurt," and I knew my answer. "No," I said firmly, "there is no deal. Mark and you are going to face full justice, without shortcuts, without negotiations, without family protection. That is a mistake, attorney." "No. Accepting your offer would be the mistake, because it would send the message that money and connections can buy impunity, and I have dedicated my life to proving the opposite. You are going to regret it. I doubt it. But Helen, there is something I want you to know. What Ray is going to have justice. Finally, after 11 years, his death is going to be investigated appropriately. His name is going to be cleared. And you are going to face what you did to him. You cannot prove anything. I have your confession on audio. I have Albert's testimony. I have the original forensic reports with the doctor's notes. And I have something else. What I have time, all the time in the world, to make sure you pay." I hung up before she could respond. That night, sitting in the garden of the house, looking at the stars, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Not because everything was resolved, the trial was still missing, battles still remained to be fought, but because finally, we had taken control of the narrative. We were no longer victims running from danger. We were warriors choosing our battlefield, and in that choice, in that silent turn from fear to action, we found our true strength. Ariana came out to the garden and sat next to me. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About your father, about how he would be proud of you, of me. Why? Because you faced your abuser. You told him the truth. You freed yourself. That requires courage most people never find. I learned it from you. No, you had it inside all along. I just helped you remember it. We stayed there, mother and daughter, under the night sky of the city. We had lost a lot in this war: friends, reputations, time, innocence. But we had gained something more valuable. We had gained our dignity, and that, we decided that night, was enough." Mark's trial lasted 3 weeks. I was present every day, Ariana too, at first with fear, but every day more firm. The defense tried everything. They alleged temporary mental disorder. They argued Ariana had provoked him. They presented witnesses who said my daughter was manipulative, but the evidence was irrefutable: the security recordings, the medical reports, the photographs of the destroyed house, and my testimony as a direct witness of that dinner. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all charges, 5 years in prison, permanent restraining order, mandatory psychological therapy. When they read the verdict, Mark didn't cry. He just looked at Ariana with an empty expression, as if he finally understood he had lost forever. Helen, sitting in the gallery, did cry, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of impotent rage. Her trial came 2 months later. The reopening of the investigation into Ray Harrison's death had revealed more than we expected. Testimonies from neighbors who were never heard, medical records demonstrating a pattern of injuries on Ray, financial records showing how Helen had taken total control of her husband's accounts months before his death, and the recordings, those damn recordings where she confessed everything. Helen's lawyers fought hard. They argued the recordings were inadmissible, that Albert's testimony was prejudiced, that there was no physical evidence after 11 years. But the judge, a woman of 60 with a reputation for being inflexible in violence cases, allowed much of the evidence to be presented. The trial lasted 5 weeks. It was exhausting, painful. Each day revealed new layers of Helen's darkness. The final verdict: guilty of intentional homicide in the degree of complicity for Ariana's case, guilty of obstruction of justice for the cover-up of Ray's death, 12 years in prison. When the judge read the sentence, Helen finally lost her composure. She screamed. She called the judge corrupt. She pointed at me and screamed that I had destroyed her family. "You destroyed your own family," I responded calmly. "I just made sure you paid for it." They took her out of the room, handcuffed, still screaming threats. But in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before: fear, real fear of what awaited her. 12 years in prison for a 64-year-old woman meant she would probably die there. And for the first time in this nightmare, I didn't feel satisfaction, just sadness for all the pain this woman had caused, for the lives she had destroyed, including her own sons. 6 months after the trial, Ariana received a letter. It was from Mark, from prison. She hesitated to open it. We sat in the kitchen for half an hour, looking at the sealed envelope. "Do you want me to open it?" I offered. "No, I need to do it." She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was short, written by hand with trembling writing. "Ariana, I do not expect you to read this. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just needed to write these words even if they never reach you. I am in therapy. Real, this time. I have started to understand what my mother did to me, what I did to you, the cycle of violence I repeated without even realizing. My therapist asked me last week if I was ever really happy in our marriage. It took me days to realize the answer is no. because it wasn't happiness I felt. It was control. And when I lost that control, it terrified me so much I responded with violence. I know I will pass years here. I deserve it. But I want you to know something. You were right. In everything. My mother killed my father. I knew it always. On some deep level, I never wanted to recognize, and I chose to become her because it was easier than facing the truth. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I just ask you to live, to be happy, to find the love I could never give you. And if you ever have a daughter, teach her what I never learned. That love does not control, does not hit, does not destroy. Love liberates. Mark. Ariana finished reading with tears falling on the paper. "Do you think he is sincere?" she asked. "I think he is starting to see the truth. If that turns into real change, only time will tell." Should I respond, "Do you want to?" She thought for a long moment. No, because anything I say to him would make it about him, about his redemption, about his process, and I am no longer part of his story. She folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. But I am going to keep it, as a reminder that even monsters are human, sick, broken, but human. That same month we received news about the Harrison family. Judge Henry Harrison, Mark's uncle, resigned from his position after an internal investigation revealed he had used his influence inappropriately in multiple cases. Not just ours, the prosecutor cousin also faced charges for obstruction of justice. The family that had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, was crumbling, not by our direct actions, but because finally someone had shone a light on their shadows, and roaches always run when the light is turned on. Christine Davis, Helen's friend who had called me to intimidate me at the beginning, published a public apology on her Facebook. She said she had been deceived, that she didn't know the full truth, that she supported victims of violence. It was a lie. Of course, she was just trying to save her reputation. But I ignored her. She was no longer worth my energy. Ariana sold the house in the hills. She couldn't stand the idea of going back there. And I understood completely, with the money, plus the compensation the judge ordered Mark to pay. She bought a small but bright apartment downtown, a new place, without memories, without ghosts. I helped her decorate it. New furniture, bright colors, plants in every window. It is mine. She said the day she moved in, completely mine. No one can destroy it. No one can take it from me. Exactly. But true karmic justice arrived unexpectedly. 1 year after Helen entered prison, I received a call from the warden. Helen had suffered a stroke. She survived, but was left partially paralyzed. She needed constant assistance for the most basic activities. The woman who had controlled everything, who had exercised absolute power over her family, now depended completely on others to eat, dress, move. "Is it terrible that I do not feel pity?" Ariana asked me when I told her. "No. It is human. She never felt pity for her victims. But I do not feel happy for her suffering either." "That," I said, "is what makes you different from her. That is what makes you better." Life, we discovered, has a poetic way of collecting its debts. Mark, the man who used his strength to control, now lived in a cell where he had no control over anything. Helen, the woman who had taken mobility and life from Ray, now had lost her own mobility. And us, the ones who had been pushed, beaten, threatened, now walked free. It wasn't revenge, it was balance. The universe, finally, finding its middle point. 2 years after the arrest, Ariana got a new job, in a smaller company, but with a boss who valued her talent and respected her boundaries. She started going out with her friends again. Some of the old ones returned, apologizing for having abandoned her. Ariana forgave them, but kept distance. She had learned who her true allies were. She even started dating someone new, a doctor she met at a conference. Gentle, patient, without any need to control her. "He is so different, Mom." She told me one afternoon while we drank coffee in her apartment. "He asks my opinion. He respects when I say no. He encourages me to spend time with my friends. It is. It is so strange that it is normal. That is how it should always be. I know now, thanks to you, and thanks to Dad, for showing me what real love looks like. As for me, my license was never suspended. The disciplinary hearing was officially closed without action. My firm survived the IRS audit without problems. And more importantly, I received calls from 5 different women saying my case with Ariana had given them the courage to report their own abusers. I saw how you fought for your daughter, one of them told me. And I thought, if a successful lawyer had no shame in admitting her daughter was a victim, then I shouldn't have it either. That was my real payment, not money, not public recognition. But knowing our nightmare had lit the path for others. One afternoon, 3 years after that fatal dinner, Ariana and I visited Robert's grave. We brought fresh flowers, cleaned the tombstone, sat on the grass next to it. "Hi, Dad," said Ariana. "Sorry I haven't come in a while. I have been busy rebuilding my life. I want you to know I am okay. Finally, really okay. I have a job I love. I have true friends. And I met someone who treats me like you treated Mom, with respect. With kindness. And Mom," she continued, "Mom was exactly who you always said she was, a warrior, my hero." I wiped my tears silently. "We miss you," said Ariana. "We miss you every day. But I think you would be proud of us, of how we survived, of how we fought." The wind blew softly, moving the leaves of the nearby trees, and for a moment, just a moment, I could swear I heard Robert's laugh, his laugh that said, "Of course I am proud. I always have been." We left the cemetery holding hands, mother and daughter, walking towards the future, a future without fear, without violence, without having to look over our shoulders. Justice had been served, not perfect, because human justice never is, but sufficient, and karma, that cosmic balance we find so hard to believe in, had done its part. The ones who caused pain now lived in pain, and the ones who suffered now walked free. That is how the universe works. We discovered, slow, imperfect, but inevitable. The truth always finds its way. And justice, although late, always arrives. Today is 5 years since that dinner. 5 years since my blood froze hearing an applause celebrating violence against my daughter. 5 years since I dialed that number and changed the course of our lives forever. I am sitting in my garden, the same one where Robert grew his herbs. The rosemary was finally pruned. The thyme is under control. The plants he loved now grow orderly, healthy, revived, like us. Ariana comes to visit me every Sunday, no longer for roast, although sometimes I prepare it in Robert's honor. She comes simply because she wants to, because our relationship is no longer marked by trauma, but by the love that was always there. Today she brought someone with her. Mom, she says with a smile that lights up the whole garden. I introduce you to Daniel, the doctor she met 2 years ago, the gentle man who treats her as she always deserved to be treated. I watch him carefully while he greets, the way he looks at Ariana, the way he waits for her to speak first, the way he keeps a respectful distance until she invites him closer. I see respect. I see patience. I see real love. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vance, he says with genuine sincerity. Ariana has told me a lot about you, about everything you did for her. I just did what any mother would do. No, says Ariana, taking my hand. Not any mother. Many mothers look the other way. Many mothers choose to believe the lies because the truth is too painful. But you didn't. You never looked the other way. We ate lunch together in the garden, light conversation, genuine laughter. Daniel tells stories of his work at the hospital. Ariana talks about her new project at the pharmaceutical company, one that could help make medicines more accessible in rural communities. I am returning to my purpose, she tells me, to do science that matters. That helps. Your father would be so proud. I know. I feel he is watching me, that both are watching us. After lunch, Daniel kindly offers to wash the dishes. Ariana and I stay in the garden, alone for a moment. Is it serious, I ask? Yes. She responds with a shy smile, very serious. Mom, he asked me to marry him. My heart skips a beat, not of fear this time, of hope. And what did you say I said I needed time? Not because I have doubts about him, but because I need to make sure I am ready, that I have healed enough. That, I say, is exactly the right answer. It shows you have learned, that you know your worth. I also told him that before being able to say yes, I needed him to know my whole story, the violence, the trial, everything. I do not want secrets in this relationship. And how did he react? He hugged me. He told me nothing in my past changed how he felt about me, that he admired my strength, that he would be honored to spend his life showing me how a woman should be treated. My eyes fill with tears. Then you have my blessing. When you are ready, thank you, Mom. For everything, for never giving up on me, for showing me I deserved better, for saving my life. You saved your own life, daughter. I just gave you the tools. We stayed silent for a moment, listening to the wind in the trees, the birds singing, the ordinary life we almost lost. Do you know what I have been thinking lately? Says Ariana. What about all the women who didn't have the luck I had? The ones who do not have a lawyer mother, the ones who do not have resources, the ones trapped without a visible exit. I think about them all the time. I have been considering something. I want to use my story, publicly, to help others. I look at her surprised. Are you sure that means exposing yourself, reliving the trauma? I know. But Mom, if my story can help a single woman recognize the signs, to have the courage to report, to know there is life after abuse, then it is worth it. My daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter, then we will do it together. I will support you every step. Daniel comes out of the kitchen, drying his hands. Do I interrupt something important? No, says Ariana, getting up. We were finishing. Ready to go when you are ready. They say goodbye. I see them walk away, hand in hand, towards their car, and for the first time in 5 years, I feel complete peace. Because my daughter not only survived, she flourished. That night, alone at home. I open my laptop. I have been writing these memoirs for months, the full story, every detail, not for me, but for the others, for the women sitting at family dinners, feeling something is wrong, but unable to name it, for those who receive the first blow and wonder if they are exaggerating, for those who love their abusers and hate themselves for it, for the mothers who suspect but are afraid to ask. I write the last line. If my story helps a single woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. Every tear, every battle, every sleepless night. Because in the end, it is not about revenge. It is about justice. And justice begins when someone, somewhere, says, no more. I said no more that night in that dining room. When will you say it? I close the laptop. Tomorrow I will send it to be published. Tomorrow another battle will begin, this time to change hearts and minds. But tonight I allow myself to simply be a 62-year-old woman. Mother, lawyer, widow, survivor. I pour myself a cup of coffee, the last one Robert taught me to make, and I toast in silence to my husband, who taught me what true love was, to my daughter, who found her strength in the darkness, to all the women who came before us, opening paths, and to all who will come after, walking the paths we helped create. Violence did not win, fear did not win, corrupt power did not win. We won. 2 women who refused to be silenced, who refused to be destroyed, who refused to accept that violence was their destiny, and in that rejection, in that resistance. We found something more precious than any legal victory. We found our voice, our dignity, our freedom. If you are listening to this and recognize your story and mine, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not crazy. It is not your fault. And yes, there is a way out. It may be you do not see it now. It may be you feel trapped. It may be you love the person who hurts you, and that confuses you. All that is normal. But listen to me well. You deserve love that does not hurt. You deserve respect that does not condition. You deserve to live without fear. And when you are ready, when you finally say, "No more," there will be people there to help you. Lawyers, counselors, shelters, families, friends. It may be you lose things on the way. I lost friendships, reputation, years of peace. But I gained something more important. I gained my daughter back, and she gained her life. So thank you for listening to the end. Thank you for allowing me to share this story I kept too long. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and activate the bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman, a life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes, a story like this can change a whole day, can change a whole life. God bless you. And remember, true love never hurts. Never. Until next time, with love. Elena Vance, a mother who saved her daughter, and a daughter who saved her own life.